Welcome to the Stories We Share podcast. On this podcast, you'll hear stories from several different people who are all following Jesus and the ways that he is working in each one of their lives. You'll hear stories of heartbreak, you'll hear stories of triumph and victory. In all of it, God is working out each one of our stories to show his goodness, his faithfulness, and his love. Our prayer is that you will find hope in the stories we share.
Hey, we want to welcome you to the Stories podcast this month, and we're excited to share a story with you of a former NFL 13-year veteran, Keith Byars, and also Ohio State Buckeye legendary running back. And we had the great opportunity in the month of February to have Keith join us at our men's Super Bowl breakfast to talk about faith, leadership, his journey throughout his growing up days here in Dayton, and also his time with the Buckeyes and the 4 NFL teams that he spent time with. And so sit back and enjoy a great story and a great interview with Keith Byars. Well, hey guys, just want to talk with Keith for a little bit and let you capture a little bit of his story and encourage us. And thanks for coming, being a part of this today, and joining us. Keith, we mentioned before, grew up here in Dayton area, up north Dayton, Trotwood area, and incredible Buckeye career, one of the top running backs in Ohio State history for sure, and would have even broken more records had in your foot. Is that what you ended up breaking, your foot?
Foot, my senior.
And then, a first-round draft pick after that, and that great 13-year career in the NFL. But wanted to back to Dayton in those growing up days. I mean, what was it like growing up, being Keith Byars and a family, 5 kids, right? With your mom and dad, and tell us a little bit about your family and growing up days.
Well, growing up in Dayton, I was 5 kids, and I used to tease my mother. I said, because we had the first 4 of us are a year apart. My sister was born in September of 59. My brother was born in July of 60. My other brother was born in July of 61, and I was born in October 63. I said, Mom, you was pregnant for 4 years. And then she waited almost 5 years before my little sister came on in 68. So it was 5 kids, and I'm sure you guys have heard that African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And I'm a recipient of something like that. I had a great family. My father was a preacher. My grandfather was a preacher, so I'm second generation PK. And so I had mother, father, just a great family. Then outside of my family, I had a lot of tons of relatives, friends, and teachers, coaches, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom till I got to high school. So she was the major disciplinarian in the family, because when you're a kid, most of the time you mess up is before 5 o'clock. And so by the time my father got home, the punishments was already dealt out. You see, what happened to you today? Like, yeah, it wasn't a good day. And my mother didn't believe it. I wait till your father get home. I'm going to tell him what you did. And he going to get, she like handled all of it. My father didn't have a chance to get too many whippings on me because my mother had already handled that. But it was a good dynamic, that I grew up in. It was, full of love. And when I went outside to go play, it was always people in the neighborhood set eyes on you. So you always had to, pretty much stay on the straight and narrow, because somebody's going to tell. And, and I love that. I really did. And so I was always, surrounded, with love inside the house and love, outside of the house. And, you learn early, what kind of decisions to make, because you're going to be held responsible for them decisions, good and bad.
Yeah. Hey, tell me about, sometimes we think people that get to your level athletically and, Division I athlete and an NFL athlete, that, man, he just must have focused on football only. What was it like those growing up days, and when did it click to you that, hey, this is it. This is what God's moving me towards?
That's a good question. I mean, you could have met me at any age of my life and you would get the same answer.
Yeah.
I always wanted to play professional sports. I don't remember not wanting to be a professional football or baseball player. Those are my 2 sports that I grew up wanting to play. Grew up a diehard Cleveland Browns fan. You know, my first hero was a running back that played for the Browns in the 60s by the name of Leroy Kelly. You know, he wore number 44. That was my high school jersey number, was 44. I was just a diehard Cleveland Browns fan. And I just love sports. My father was from Pittsburgh, so I grew up a Pittsburgh Pirate fan and not a Steeler fan. I hated the Steelers. As much as I love the Pirates, I hate the Steelers that much. So everybody in our house was Steeler fans except for me, being a, Cleveland Browns fan, but my family respected, one of these days. So during the 70s when I was growing up, the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls, and I hated every one of them. Every those Super Bowl Sundays, I was like, the Browns are going to get you next year. I'll be our next. And the Browns has been waiting for that next year ever since.
Yeah.
But I didn't get a chance to see Jim Brown play, but I used to tease my family, when Jim Brown, that was before the Super Bowl, they used to beat y'all. But so I used to, bite on that, thing. But I always grew up wanting to play professional sports. I played 4 sports in high school. I played football, basketball, baseball, and ran track. And but the 2 that stood out the most was football and baseball. I didn't start playing football on a team until the 7th grade. That was the first time I was able to play on a team. And, growing up in Trotwood area, they had the Pee Wee Rams football. And it started in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And when I was in 4th grade, I had one of those houses where you asked one parent to answer. That was the answer for both parents. And when I was in 4th grade, I went to go on the football team. I asked my mom, could I play? And she said no. I couldn't go ask my father because that was the answer. So I didn't get to play football in 4th grade. 5th grade, I asked my father, could I play? He said, I don't care. Go ask your mom. Dad, that's not the answer. Yes. I went and asked. He said, no, you're not playing. Because my 2 older brothers didn't play football. So I couldn't play. So then in the 6th grade, I got them both in the living room, asked them, could I play? And before my father could answer, my mother said, no, you ain't playing. So I didn't get to play. And so back in those days, most of the football games were on Saturday or Sunday. And so on Friday at school, guys would have their football jerseys on. And 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, my classmates used to tease me. They're like, man, why ain't you on the football team? I said, I'm better than you, but you ain't on the team. And I didn't have no jersey, so I had to deal with that for 3 years. But we would go outside in recess, and I would dominate out there doing recess, but they're like, no, that ain't the same. But my mother wouldn't let me play because she thought I would get hurt. And I was like, Mom, but you let me go out here in the neighborhood, play football with all the older kids with no equipment on. That's fine. I'll come in the house with busted nose, lip and everything. Don't matter. Get back out there. You be tough. Get back out there and play. But I can't play on a team with equipment. So it wasn't until the 7th grade when I actually played on a football team.
Wow.
I tried was the first time I played organized football.
You had mentioned a minute ago about and I totally agree, it takes that village, you know what I mean? Just as important as Nat and I are around our boys, us getting them around other qualities. That's why they're here, so they can be around you men and in great environments. What were some of those people, and probably your parents, maybe a coach that you remember, man, just either instilling some values or they were just one of your biggest encouragers in those growing up days, and how valuable those voices are?
Oh, very. That's good segue to that. My father, on the weekends, I had an uncle that owned a local pizza place, and this was before Domino's Pizza. So we used to deliver pizzas on the weekend. And we didn't have a delivery area like on the west side of Dayton. And I couldn't have been no more than 9 or 10 years old. And we would do it on the weekends, Friday and Saturday night. And we didn't close until the phone stopped ringing. So we've been there 11, 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, delivering pizzas. And I always had a little size on me growing up because you can see I'm still big now. And a gentleman, where we was waiting to go out to take deliveries, a customer was in there. He saw me. He's, hey, little man, you got broad shoulders. What do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I'm going to be a professional football, professional baseball player. And the stranger said, you can't do that. That's 1 in a million get a chance to play pro sports. You got to think of something else to do. And my father overheard him. And said my father was a preacher, very, not aggressive individual, but my father jumped in that man's face and said, "Don't you ever tell my son what he can't do. He told you what he's going to do. What he wants to do."
Yeah.
Because my father hear me all my life. Up to that point, I'm 10, saying, I'm a professional football player. I'm a professional baseball player. One day, I'm seeing those guys on TV. That's going to be me. So he heard me say that at any point in my life.
Yeah.
But that day, that Friday night, when that man told me that you can't do it, this one in a million. And my father, got in the guy's face and, "Don't you ever tell my son that." I looked at my father. I'm like, "You really believe in me?" That, lit something inside of me that was already. But Dad, nurturing,
Yeah.
pouring the seeds on that, because one thing for me to say it around the house, and you hear, my son said it's going to be this.
That's good.
But you actually believe in that. And from that day on, all I could hear was when people would try to steal your dreams or say what you can. I'm that one in a million. If you tell me it's one in a million, okay, I'm not one. Don't tell me what I can't do, and I don't tell anybody else. When I go out and talk to kids and they tell me what they want to do when they grow up, hey, water that dream, nurture it. At least they're dreaming, they're having a goal.
That's a good word.
So don't be a dream stealer.
Yeah.
So I never, surrounded myself with dream stealers, because you get people like, my dream may be bigger than yours, but you're not going to limit me. And so that's why you can't share what you want to do with everybody, because they not always going in the same direction that you want to go in. So then you had to learn to surround yourself with positive, upward, forward-thinking people.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the, the keys to my life. When I couldn't have been more in the 7th grade. I remember junior high. My mother said to me one time, she said, "Keith, if you want to know your future, look at your friends." And I have lived with that. I'm 62, and I still, and I look, it was one of those slow release messages. And when I look back 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years later, and I'm like, everybody I grew up with, ain't none of us in jail. None of us are wife beaters. And, your inner circle. We live in different parts of the country, but we've all been very positive, community-oriented people. And I was like, well, that's the future that I want to be a part of. And when I get together with some of my friends, it was like, oh, man, we just turn back into kids again and love on that, because we don't be around people that want to steal. I just tell people, I'm the weak link. If y'all want to do something wrong, don't tell me, because I'm snitching. I'm telling, But if y'all want to do something positive, I'm your guy. If you do something wrong, no, that's not for me.
Yes. I mean, that line, walk away with that line he just said about watering a kid's dream, a young person's dream, and don't be a dream stealer. Because if there's anybody that has a huge voice in their own kids or grandson's life, it's dad and grandpa, right? Or those that have that influence. And that's a great reminder, because we can get negative. We can see all the obstacles, and we can isolate a young one pretty quick it's defeating. You know what I mean? It's very defeating.
Very much so.
Hey, from high school, obviously you're getting pretty good at football by this point, because Ohio State's knocking on your door and recruiting. Tell us what it was like in those days, thinking, man, this might really happen. I might go be an Ohio State Buckeye, or other places that you were even being recruited. And tell us what that journey was like, getting recruited for them and then ultimately being a Buckeye.
Well, yeah, recruiting has changed from, 40 plus years ago to what it is today. But I always wanted to be a Buckeye. I always wanted to play pro sports. I always wanted to play for the Cleveland Browns, but I knew I wanted to always be a Buckeye. Woody Hayes was who didn't, if Woody Hayes was still the coach at Ohio State, I probably wouldn't have taken a visit to no other place if Woody said he wants me. And so you get a lot of letters, and I could have went to, any college, growing up, especially by my senior year. That we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet, and that. So you had to get a letter in the mail to your high school coach, and your coach would hand it to you. Then eventually they get your home address, then they get your phone number, and I knew I wanted to go to Ohio State. So when Ohio State came knocking on my door, I was like, "Shoot, okay, all right, I'm finally." And my senior year, right or the end of the football season, and I had gotten a ton of mail at this time, a lot of phone calls. Bo Schembechler, the head coach at Michigan at the time, called and said he wanted to come over to my house for a visit. I'm like, Michigan. I'm not they're the bad guys. But this is Bo Schembechler, and I was taught to be respectful. So Bo Schembechler comes over to my house in Dayton, Ohio, and sits in my living room for 2 hours. And it wasn't a fair fight because I'm 17, 18 years old, and he's a professional recruiter and playing mind games. And he left my house 2 hours later with a visit. Already, he had pulled out his bag. When are you going to come to visit Michigan? You're going to be in Michigan? And next thing I know, he had confused me, and I had scheduled a visit to University of Michigan. And I was like, I grew up hating you guys and not wanting to, I mean, we're in church, the Christian type of hate. Not one of you guys are the bad guys. And I visited, that was my first recruiting visit, was University of Michigan. Like today, like guys, Ohio State have a home game, you got a ton of recruits. I never went to an Ohio State football game.
Wow.
I never went to any college football game. My first college football game was my first college football game as a freshman at Ohio State. So during the recruitment, everybody was on the equal balance, so I'd never seen a football Saturday because we played high school football on Friday nights. Saturday mornings, we had film. And I didn't have the the finances to fly all over the place to go to a school, and then like I said, it wasn't timing. Most of the Ohio State games started at 12 o'clock. We're out of films by 11:30, so I got to hustle home to watch the Buckeye game. So it really was no big deal for me to go to a game on a Saturday. I'm judging them by what I'm watching on TV, what I'm reading, and what I'm learning. So I just know that when it came time to choose a school, and my final college choices came down to Ohio State, Michigan, Pittsburgh, Arizona State, and Tennessee was my final 5 core schools, and for various reasons why. Pittsburgh, believe it or not, were good. They had Dan Marino at quarterback, and it was a really good program. Plus, my family's from Pittsburgh. They was trying to get me to come there, and I was seriously thought it. Tennessee was good. They got a great job of recruiting me. And one of my track coach at a high school was from Tennessee. So that was in my ear. Arizona State, because I was a baseball player too. They wanted me just as much for baseball as they did for football. And if I had chose Arizona State, I definitely would have played 2 sports there. And me and Barry Bonds would have been in the same outfield. So that would have been a treat. And Michigan, I just never saw myself going there until Bo Schembechler came in my living room and confused me. And then I finally, struck out of it. No, you can't go here. You cannot go here. And then Ohio State came along, and the summer before my senior year, when Ohio State was recruiting me, they set up a meeting with Archie Griffin. And I had never met Archie Griffin. I grew up, who didn't know who Archie Griffin was? A 2-time Heisman Trophy winner. And he was playing for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I got to go down to Cincinnati, watch the Bengals practice. And then after practice, Archie, I come up, shook my hand, and said, "What are you about to do?" "Just to meet you, Mr. Griffin." I was happy to see. "Do you want to have lunch?" "Yeah, come on, eat lunch with me." So I got to go to the Cincinnati Bengals and eat their training table at lunchtime with Archie Griffin, and we sat over lunch, and I was like, "Man, this is a lot of food." Like, go ahead, get out. I can have lunch with Archie Griffin and, meet a lot of Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm only going to be a senior in high school. That was a treat. But one thing that Archie told me, that all the great players from Ohio stay in Ohio and go to Ohio State. And I was like, well, I want to be great. I want to go to Ohio State. And so I got to meet him. Forward later on, and after the season was over with, like I said, Bo Schembechler had came to, after my high school senior football season was over with. And you get phone calls all day long. And then one day I get a telephone call. My sister answered, and she said, "Keith, telephone." I said, "Well, who is it?" He said his name is Woody Hayes. Who? Woody Hayes ain't calling. He's not even a coach at Ohio State. And I thought my sister was pranking me. And she said, "No." He said his name, Woody Hayes. "Come get the phone." Hello, and it was Woody Hayes. And Woody Hayes' voice. And he said, "This is Keith Byars." "Yes, sir. I'm Woody Hayes." I believe that. He said, I heard Ohio State's recruiting you, and you want to be great? Yes, sir. All great players from Ohio. I'm like, Archie Griffin just told me this.
I've heard that line.
Yeah, I heard that. So it must be true. And then, in Woody's, in his voice, he proceeded to holler at me and started screaming at me like, why haven't you, committed to Ohio State? Well, I just want to look at some of these other schools. Son, all great players from Ohio State, Ohio. When are you coming here? I'm like, I'll be up there in 2 weeks. I want to meet you. I want to meet you too. It's like, well, but he was really the winner. So I left out some of the curse words but I'm like, Woody's cussing me out. Woody Hayes. And so 2 weeks later, when I visited Ohio State, Woody's favorite restaurant that's no longer there used to be called the High Lie, right off Olentangy Boulevard in Columbus. And I had lunch with him on a Saturday afternoon. I'm sitting here in the middle. Woody Hayes is right here. Earl Bruce is over here. And we had lunch, just us three in there. And I probably said about 4 or 5 words because Woody's dropping pearls in this ear, Earl's on the other ear. And I was just like, I wish we had camera phone.
We're not leaving lunch until you're a Buckeye. Is that what it was?
I would have loved, to have that picture. And I'm a senior in high school having lunch with Woody Hayes and Earl Bruce. That was just, when you live in time, history in real time, you don't really always see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother and father came to visit. That was the only college recruiting visit they came on, was the Ohio State one. And they met Woody Hayes. And so for the next 4 years while I was at Ohio State, every time I saw Woody Hayes, he would ask me, not how Mr. and Miss Byars doing, how's Reggie and Margaret doing? I'm like, how you remember my parents' first name? But, and I had, so that was like a priceless time of my life because he still had an office at the ROTC building at Ohio State. And, he would tell me to just come by sometime and just sit down and talk to him. I took him up on that. And so he was not my coach at Ohio State, but I spent a lot of time, with Woody Hayes and, just a lot of the life lessons that, he would just drop on you. It was just like going, wow. Just really, I appreciated those 4 years being able to have to spend time with, Woody Hayes, Earl Bruce, and Jim Kressel, and all that. That was, really special because you're getting life lessons that's going to last you a lifetime. And it is 40 years later, I'm still talking about it.
That's right. Hey, one of those, everybody has those famous plays that people just remember forever, and some in this room probably remember. I'll give you the date, October 13th, 1984, that shoeless touchdown. We're going to watch it and then let you share a moment about what you remember with that play. It'll be up on the screen.
Manny gives to Byars. Byars has the corner. He has the first down, and look out. He's hurrying through. He's running without a shoe to the touchdown. It's all over. Well, Gary, I know we keep talking about Mike Tomczak's head, but this touchdown really does belong mostly to Tomczak, who put them in the right play, the right audible. And then, of course, Keith Byars, tremendous skill. He threw a shoe. We talked about shoes. You saw the size 17 of Karowitz. Well, his size 8 or 9 is out there on the floor somewhere. But this is a high explosive run by Keith Byars.
Who is that announcer, right?
Pat Hayden. He was way off of the size 8.
Tomczak has been throwing the ball so
oh, man.
Run the draw plays. You take advantage.
How many times you watched that play happen? I'm sure a lot over the years.
Too many.
And it was touchdown number 4, right? If I read that right.
Touchdown.
Was it 5 that game?
5 that game.
Man.
Needed all 5 of them.
Well, and you kept your shoe on for the other 4.
I kept this shoe on for the other ones. That was the day before my birthday also.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, my birthday is October 14th, so that was my pre-birthday present to myself. At the time, Ohio Stadium set 90,000 people. Now it's over 100,000. But I've met probably close to 500,000 people that were there that day. I don't know how, but they were in the horseshoe that day.
That's right. That's funny.
So, yes, indeedy. That's a play that will be with me for forever and a day. And just as a side note, I've always been a teetotaler all my life. I've never done a drug. I've never been drunk a day in my life. Everybody's got their own history. That's just part of my history. And when I see that play, and it takes me back to at the time, I don't know what could be better than a high like that. Like a natural high, other than accepting Jesus Christ in your life. Moments like that one, when I look back over the course, I was like, what is higher than that? You're playing for the team that you grew up dreaming about playing for. It's homecoming. It's Ohio State. It's sold out. And you're running down the field about to score a touchdown, and you score a touchdown, one shoe, two shoes, whatever. And to hear the stadium go crazy, it's a national TV, everybody in the country's watching, that is a high, earthly high that's better than any drug, any alcohol, so I'm high right now just looking at it.
You kick your shoe off if you want.
Great feelings. And the only thing that really comes close to it compared in the natural is being there when a child is being born. That is a love, like, none other. Sometimes I have two kids. And when my daughter was born, that's the first time I really knew the true definition of love at first sight. I know we got spouses that we love. Oh, baby, I loved you for the day. And some of those, when you have a child and you see that child being born, the first one, that is true love. Because I'm like, wow, that's what love at first sight. My daughter, she was born. I was like, that's love
cool.
At first sight
That's
to
right.
me. And I've been married, but it wasn't like that. It's like, so, similar to the way Jesus loves us.
That's right.
Just unconditional. Yeah, but scoring that touchdown on that day, that was homecoming. We were losing 24-0. And I was like, so over those 500,000 people that was at the stadium, I was like, how many of y'all left and came back? With Buckeyes down 24-0, this time turn the TV off and everything. So we was able to come back and win that game. Yeah, so that will always be special.
Hey, that Buckeye career was fantastic. And from there to the NFL, we'll talk about that for a few moments, and then just your fatherhood and legacy aspects of it. What was it like? None of us, there's some young ones in here, we're not going to squash your dream. Could be first-round draft picks, but all of us with a little bit of age, none of us have ever experienced anything like it. What was it like, the draft day? Where were you? And what was that experience?
I only played 4 games, parts of 4 games in my senior year at Ohio State. And there's only 28 teams in the NFL instead of 32 that they have now. And I didn't go to the combine. I had a surgery in January. I was in a cast for 12 weeks. And I got out of a cast about 2 weeks before the NFL draft. I visited 21 of 28 teams in 10 days.
Wow.
I was just flying all over, getting everybody wanted to, x-ray my foot, see if I'm going to be okay. And everybody had me projected going from either number 1 to late in the first round or maybe second round pick. So I was visiting all these teams. And the last team I visited was Philadelphia. The draft was on a Wednesday. I visited Philadelphia on Monday. I visited Pittsburgh was the last team on Monday. And everybody had me going at the latest, I'll go to 9th pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Cincinnati Bengals picked 11th. And they was like, if he's there 11, we're going to take him. If he's still there, we think he may be gone. So when I was in Pittsburgh on the Monday before the draft, the Eagles called and asked me to jump on the plane to fly over to Philadelphia. Their doctors wanted to see me. But at this point, I had already been to 21 teams. I'm not going to 22. I'm tired. I want to go home. And I said, y'all can I'm not going. They got a new coach by the name of Buddy Ryan, who was the defense coordinator at the 85 Bears. That dude seems kind of crazy. I don't think I want to play for him. No, I'm not going to Philadelphia. So I got on a plane and flew back home to Dayton, Ohio, prior, to the draft. And then that Monday night in Philadelphia, Buddy Ryan had a radio show, and he badmouthed me. He said, Keith Byars is a medical reject. We wouldn't draft him if he was there anyway. He's not going to go. Pittsburgh heard about that. They just saw me. Then they got spooked off me.
Oh.
They were like, if he's there at 9, we're not going to take him. And so the draft was on a Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock a.m. is when the draft was back in those days. It wasn't as big. Everybody goes to New York or go to an NFL city. I was here in Dayton, Ohio, in my parents' basement, watching the NFL draft. And I remember that day like yesterday. My father was diagnosed with cancer my senior year, like my senior year was Ohio State 85. So December of 85, he was diagnosed with cancer. So now you fast forward the clock, it's April of 86. And my father, we're sitting there at the NFL draft in the basement, and the draft won. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers had the first pick. And then around 5, pick 6, the Eagles called me, and they said, if you're still there at 10, we're thinking about drafting you, but only way we want to go and operate on your foot again and insert a screw. 'Cause I had a broken foot. They wanted to insert a screw into my 5th metatarsal, which is like the baby toe. And they said, if you're there, you okay with us operating on you? And I told the Eagles, I'm not, I've been praying to the Lord for the recovery of my foot. I'm not going to need any more surgeries. It's going to be fine. So no, you're not going to operate on me if you draft me. I'm not going to submit to no, operation. And my father looked at me, and I hung the phone up, and my father said, why'd you tell him that? I said, Dad, I've been praying the Lord that my foot is healed. I'm not going to need any more surgeries on my foot. It's going to be good. And my father's like, yeah, but if they're going to draft you, I'm like, no, I'm not, Dad, I'm going to be fine. Don't do it. So I was like, that's when I'm like the beginning of my total manhood. Like, Dad, you raised me to this point. I'm responsible now. And my father was like, okay, all right, I'm gonna pull back and trust you, even though you're supposed to say yes. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers come up at 9. Everybody just knew I was going there, because my family was like, all these years you've been hating the Steelers. You're going to be a Steeler. But because Buddy Ryan had scared them off, the Steelers passed on me, and they took a tackle from Temple University. And no sooner than the commissioner got up and announced the Pittsburgh Steelers pick, and it wasn't me, a big lows off my shoulder, like, yeah, I didn't want to go there. Immediately, my phone started ringing. It was the Philadelphia Eagles. You got 15 minutes to make your choice. The Eagles didn't take 30 seconds. And they called me and said, we're about to draft you. The commissioner had to make a U-turn, give him the lope, and he goes and, go back there to read my name, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, they're taking me after I just told them a couple hours or so that I'm not having more surgeries. And it was Buddy Ryan on the phone, and he's like, you're my franchise. I want you. Welcome to Philadelphia. You're going to be an Eagle. I was like, okay. And so that was my draft story. I mean, I was on a plane to Philadelphia within the next flight out that afternoon. I'm flying to Philadelphia. And, that was the best decision that I could have ever, franchise I could ever want to play for. Philadelphia is a city of brotherly love. And a lot of my teammates from those Eagles teams, I mean, if they were in here right now, we would just be kids, and we got different parents, but we're brothers. And some of my teammates on those Eagles teams throughout the year, I played in Philadelphia for 7 years. Minister Reggie White was on that team, Jerome Brown, and, some of these guys, gone on to be with the Lord now. But those teams that I played on in Philadelphia, Randall Cunningham, he's a preacher now in Las Vegas. We're just as close as we were today that we were, back then. And so a lot of those guys, whenever we get together, we're just still, great friends. And I'm saying it's apropos that Eric Allen went into the Hall of Fame last summer, and it was a ton of us Eagles there up in Canton, Ohio, to be like, man, you in the Hall of Fame, and so am I, because I know you're part of me, and so that's that brotherhood, and that bond that would, carries us throughout all these years later.
That's awesome. Hey, most of us won't even ever make it to a Super Bowl, let alone play in one and score a touchdown in one. Tell us what you remember from Super Bowl 31 and just all the fanfare and joy around that whole event.
Well, it was dreams come true.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a dream stealer, because that was one of my dreams, of playing in the Super Bowl and have an opportunity to play in it. My first Super Bowl I was a rookie, and it was a Super Bowl 1986, the Giants against the Denver Broncos. My college roommate was Pepper Johnson, a great friend and brother of mine. He was a rookie. His team, I was with the Eagles that year. We went 5-10-1, so we were a long way from the Super Bowl. But because my college roommate and best friend was playing in the Super Bowl, I went. And I was like, wow, I got to do this someday. We're out in Pasadena, California, and I'm in the stands as a fan. I'm like, this is not a good feeling. I'm happy for him, but I want to be on the field with my helmet and shoulder pads on too. And I said, I'm never going to another Super Bowl unless I play in it. Then I broke my word. The next year I went to the Super Bowl. It was the Denver Broncos versus the Washington Redskins at the time, and they had an African-American quarterback, Doug Williams. And I said, well, I'm going to go just to witness history. It's the first time African-American is quarterback. I have opportunity to be in the stands. I'm going to go. So I went to that game, and I said, I'm never going to a Super Bowl again until I play. And I didn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to another Super Bowl until Super Bowl 31 when I was with the New England Patriots. And we won the AFC Championship game against Jacksonville, and that was one of the coldest games I played in. The temperature was 1 or 2 degrees with the wind chill minus 12 and 13. But I'm like, oh, we can't win today against a team from Florida. we gotta go to Super Bowl. And winning that game that Sunday night in New England, it was cold, and I was like, we won. We were on the field celebrating, and I always turn into a little kid on game day. I was like, man, why do we love football so much? Because you grew up wanting to do that. Man, where did you want to be right here in the locker room to go play? And winning that game, the AFC Championship game, to qualify for the first Super Bowl, you're celebrating, confettis and all that stuff running around. But I was like, I had to, my wife said, what were you doing over there in the end zone on one knee? You was crying, wasn't you? Yes. It was tears of joy, because now I'm getting to play in the Super Bowl. And, that Super Bowl Sunday, in New Orleans against Green Bay, Bill Parcells was the head coach, and Bill was teasing me. He said, how are you going to be in this game? Am I going to have to spell you a lot? You're going to talk, you're going to get too tired on me out there. I said, Bill, I've been playing this game. I said, you'll never see me get tired in a football game. I said, if I ever got tired, it won't be this one. I've been playing this game in my head for a long time. I can't wait till Sunday, to get there. And then Super Bowl Sunday came, and we ended up losing the game. But at one point we were down 10-0 in the game. And I'm like, no, this is not how my dream ends. We're going to win. So give me the ball. So the first time I touched the ball, I caught a screen pass and went about 35, 40 yards. And then later on that drive, I scored the touchdown. And, when Rob Gronkowski tied in for the Patriots, when he used to score a touchdown, he used to spike the ball. And then, oh, look at a Gronk spike. I'm like, I've done that already. What are you talking about? So I used to spike the ball a lot when I scored touchdowns in the pros. Couldn't do it when I was in college. But when I scored that touchdown in Super Bowl 31, I'm like, out of all the balls I spike, this ain't the one.
I'm keeping this, right?
I caught it, and it was just like so much emotion that came through my body. And I was like, man, you're making history, because you watch like now they've been running Super Bowls, highlights from Super Bowl 1 all the way to Super Bowl 59. And they always recap those games, and whoever scored a touchdown. I'm like, dude, you're going to be a part of history someday. And I just immediately looked in the stands where my family were. My son was 2 years old. My daughter was 4.
Wow.
And I just pointed at them like, y'all, this is for us. And so I still had a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't spike this one, because this is for my next generation, the kids. This is, history. And, now scores 10-7. We got a chance to take over, and we go up 14-10. And then, just the game got away. Too many turnovers. We had 4 turnovers in that game. Drew Bledsoe threw 4 interceptions. And special teams come up in big plays. And Desmond Howard was a Super Bowl MVP. He had a 99-yard kickoff return against us. Just when we get within 6 points, the momentum is coming back toward us, and we end up losing the game. And when I'm sitting on the bench, when the clock hit 0-0-0, and I was like, man, all my dreams come true, but the end of my dream, we're win.
Yeah.
Put some more time on that clock. Yeah. We got more football to play. And all the confetti's rolling down, and my good friend on the other team is Reggie White. His dream come true. My other good friend, Keith Jackson, they were with the Green Bay Packers. And there's a video of me just sitting on the bench, doing the celebration. I'm the last Patriot to the locker room, because I'm kind of in shock, because I'm like, we're supposed to win. It's not over. I just keep looking at the scoreboard like, no, it's not over. Then I'll go over and congratulate, Reggie White and Keith Jackson. I hugged on them, and, it was like, guys, I love you. Wish it was me. Yeah. But, a part of me still got to be happy, right, for them. And I'm like, maybe next year's our year. And, but Super Bowl Sunday will always, be special to me, because I think back to, I'm that kid that dreams do come true. Maybe not always you want them, but they came true. I played. And when I watch the Super Bowl tomorrow night, I'm going to be remembered. Oh, yeah, I remember coming out to anticipation. The world is watching, not just everybody's watching the Super Bowl.
That's right.
And to come out that locker room, to be able to do what you've dreamed of doing at every level, that's great. It's special. So it's going to be special for the players.
That's phenomenal. I mean, you said earlier, which I didn't know, the second part, that not only was your dad a pastor, but your grandfather as well. And I mean, you probably couldn't even add up how many times they were on their knees praying for you, and the kids in your family, and even when you had kids, and tell us just a little bit, what was it like growing up with a dad that was a pastor, obviously instilling faith in your home, and then those principles and truths that were driven into you as a young age carried through your college and pro years, and even today.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is. My father, was my first hero. For a lot of reasons. Why? Because being his presence, and I have a picture of my parents are no longer with us. They're, gone on, be with the Lord, but the love that they shared upon me. I mean, that's the best gift you can give a kid.
That's good.
Is to give them love and give them time. Not all the material, just their time. I mean, because, when my father would get in the car, Dad, can I go? You don't even know where I'm going. I don't care. I just want to be with you. Come on, get in the car. So I would just ride with him where he's running errands. And so the time that he's, was spent with me, like, today we have cable TV and all that good stuff, but we had radio. We had TV when I was growing up too. Don't get me wrong, I'm not that old. But
not that old.
Like late on a Friday night, like I said, especially in the summertime, the Pittsburgh Pirates radio station, late at night with less TV, we would listen to a Pirate game, especially they were playing on the West Coast, in the car. Let's drive over here, get a little better reception. It's just me and my father, just spending time, with him, trying to pick up a late game. And then I have kids, and my daughter has a lot of my traits in me, my son too, but I'm about to go. My Dad, can I go? Yeah, come on, get in the car. I asked my son, you want to go? No, where you going? My daughter didn't ask where I was going. She's wanting to just be with me.
Yeah.
And, so now I see how it goes full circle. But the time that my father invested in me and, constantly, watering my dreams, those are, that doesn't cost any money to do that.
That's right.
And so that's what, was given to me. And that I really, I guess go back to that village,
Right.
people was always, watching out for me and, it wouldn't, I didn't want to disappoint.
That's right.
I said, and I grew up around a lot of great athletes. And like I said, one of the reasons why I never done a drug or got drunk, because I saw people older than me do that and didn't make it for whatever reason why. Well, somebody weren't good enough. But I said, if I'm not, you can lie. I always tell people, you can lie to anybody in the world, everybody, but you can never lie to yourself. And I always had dreams of being a professional athlete one day. And, and I said, if I don't make it, as long as I know I gave it all I had, I got no excuses. I can live with the results as long as I'm giving all I have. When I was in Philadelphia, we had a football coach who said, all we want is all you got. It's like, he said, just that simple. He said, all we want is all you, why would you hold back? As a coach, I'm giving you all I got. And so I was, took back to my parenting days to be like, if I'm a parent, I got to give the kid all of me, because that's what my father did for me. He gave me all himself, not just for me, he did the same thing for my siblings too. But those are life lessons, and it goes back to, identity. Who are you? And a lot of people walk around don't know who they are, because not what the world tells you, but you got to come that from within yourself. And I started having family reunions on the Byars family 20 years ago, 2005, because that's something I really see that's missing, in the world, because we got access to more social media, and I want to be like that guy. I want to be, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you cannot lose who you are, in the process of, getting out. So when I have a reunion, I'm like, God, your name should mean something. You say the name of Jesus, that means something. When you use your family name, that should mean something. So I'm like, I take my name seriously. When you hear the name Byars, that should mean something to, I want to talk to my cousins and brothers. Your name is your name, because, you have to, protect that and go on. And some people don't know, well, who am I? The Bible answers those questions all the time. If you're open and willing to know who you are, we all are our own individuals made up of, community, made up of family, but it starts with you. Who are you? And so sometimes you need a reminder of who you are. I know David needed that reminder a lot of times throughout the Bible. When you read the story of David, you're, a giant killer, but you're also the same guy that slept with your best friend's wife. Not to be, I just all of those goes back, to identity. And that's something that I preach, to my kids, my cousins, and all the time. Just remember who you are and what you are and what you want to do. And like I said, I'm not a dream stealer. So whatever you decide to do in life or already doing in life, remember, people are always watching you. And that's something I've always, kept near and dear to me, because I'd never lose focus on, who I am and who I'm not. So you can, because you can't ever control what people are going to say about you. Only you can, you control it. You don't want to make it true or untrue, and so that's why, I've been in situations in my life where I have to ask myself that question: why are you here? You ain't supposed to be here. And I'm not perfect, far from perfect. And, so I can, handle the decisions I make, good and bad. But you can never lie to yourself. If that was the right decision or the wrong decision. It's up to you making that decision and choosing which way to go, and have to be willing to pay the consequences, for it.
That's good. We're going to wrap up, but one of the things I've just heard over and over and over through your story is just how much people matter and how much relationships matter. And, sometimes we'd like to complicate our walk with Christ and, or even God's word. And then you just come back to the simplicity of it in Matthew 22. And, that great commandment of we're called to do a couple things and do them well, of love others and love God. And it seems like your parents, man, they directly and indirectly put you in environments and positions and raised you in such a way to love those around you and to love God. And if I leave anybody with anything before you leave today, if we can figure that out with our kids and our grandkids and in our homes, to just genuinely love and see the people around us and love them and love God, I think that God, he can work with that. You know what I mean? Like, that's a person in position that's available and ready to be used for the kingdom of God. And so relationships matter. I think you said earlier too, that just with kids, like the time piece of it.
Yeah.
And then when we're with them, those encouraging words are just absolutely vital. And as we close, just give us a quick word. We got people of all ages in here, kids all the way up to granddads, and lots of dads and lots of families and friends that are in this room. Just in the world we live in, it seems a little bit crazy. What could be just some maybe an encouraging word? You've said many, but an encouraging word you could leave us with for the men in this room to keep carrying on and to know who you are in Christ.
We try to remember who we are. We're more than conquerors, through Jesus.
That's right.
And we're going to win. That's a good thing. We win. And the devil don't want you to know you're a winner. Because you look at the back of the book, he loses. He loses every time. He's a defeated angel. So we start to recognize, that the power that we have in us, and when you read the word, make it personal. You are more than conquerors. You are winners. You are victorious. The devil went, no, you ain't winning. No, it may not look like I'm winning, but I'm going to win. It's going to take me a while. And you just can't always wait for microwave, faith. Let me stick it in and be, boom, 30 seconds, I'm back. We have to be patient, because that's the one prayer that Lord answers yes to every time. Lord, give me more patience. Lord, give me more patience. And he says, yes, you got it. Well, how does patience come? I gave it to you. You got to wait. It comes. You got to wait. I'm giving you patience. You got patience. But we don't want to do the waiting part of the patience. I want it right now. I want it right. Mine. So just, trust in the Lord. Just one thing at a time. Just trust. And don't lose faith. Don't lose sight of who you are. You're a victor. You're victorious. Like, I didn't win that Super Bowl game on Super Bowl 31, but I'm still a winner. I still win, and so you just got to know who you are, your identification. Guys, we're men, and going to be some men, the youngest, young men, you're going to grow up. So you guys what's the youngest age you're here now? 10, 12?
Probably so.
Yeah. 10 years is going to go fast. You're going to be 22 before you know it. You'll be 32 in 20 years. And that's like, because I was in high school, we had a speaker come in, and my high school principal, he told his senior class this: you guys are about to go into the asphalt jungle. And he said, right now, 10 years to you seem like a long time. And then 10 years from now, you're going to be like, where did the time go? And it just flew by. When I was a sophomore in college, a professor gave me a book to read. She said, you're 20 years old? I'm like, yeah. She said, wait till you read this. This is the first 10 years of your life. I said, what do you mean? I'm already 20. She said, no, you don't remember much between 0 and 19. You remember different highlights. Now between age 20 and 30, you're going to remember so much more. Between 30 and 40, you're going to remember so much more, because now you think of your first 20 years of life. I mean, y'all guys remember your 5th grade teacher. What you get for Christmas when you was 8 years old? What did you remember highlights of certain things of your first 20 years. But then those next 10 years increments after that, it just goes so much faster. And now I can't believe I've been out of high school since 1982. That's 44 years ago. And I'm like, what? Where did the time go? It just goes so fast. So 10 years from now will happen so fast. Like I said, I played in the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 31. My son was 2 years old. 10 years later, my son is a big football fan. His favorite football player was Devin Hester for the Chicago Bears. His favorite team, I don't know why, was the Indianapolis Colts.
Hey.
And, they're playing the Chicago Bears in the Super Bowl in Miami. I'm living in Florida at the time. I had 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. I would have got 3, but my daughter said she didn't want to go. And so I had 2 tickets. I was going to sell those tickets and not go and sit at home and watch. But my son told me, Dad, I want to go to the game. I said, you've been to a Super Bowl, son. Daddy, I was 2. Yes, but it counts.
You've been to
He's like, no, Dad, I want to go. I want to see Devin Hester. Okay, being a good father that I am, okay, I'm not going to sell these tickets and make 5 and 10 times the value. I'm going to sacrifice, and me and you going to go to the game. Yes, we go to the game, Super Bowl 41. It's raining. It's in Miami.
Colts Bears,
right? Colts and Bears.
Yeah.
So we go, and Devin Hester takes the opening kickoff back for a touchdown. My son is going crazy. That's Devin Hester. The Colts win the game. Oh, he's even more excited. His favorite team wins the game. I said, why are you a Colts fan? I like their helmets. A white helmet with a horseshoe? What? You don't like the Eagles helmet, the Dolphins? No. Okay, here comes karma. My father was a Steelers fan. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. So your son not going to follow you. So it come back and haunt me. And I got to see Prince was the halftime show, sing Purple Rain in the rain. I'm excited. We're walking out of the stadium after the game. My son is 12 years old. It's raining. He stops me amongst all these people, grabs me by the hand. Dad, what's going on? Thank you for bringing me to the game today. This is the best day of my life. Oh, my gosh. If it wasn't already raining, you'd have seen all the tears falling out of my eyes. I just hugged him and this is the best day of my life too, son. So he got married a few years ago, and I told that story at his wedding. And I said, this is one of the best days of your life. And out of my top 5 days of life, that day at Super Bowl 41 is definitely going to always be one of my top 5 days, father-son moments, with my son. So I see some fathers there, some son, have those type of moments. So you probably have already had them. Don't necessarily have to be a Super Bowl memory, but have those time of moments that you have, with your kids. It don't have to be as dramatic as a Super Bowl, whatever dramatic is for you, but just that time. And so that's a day that I'm going to talk about 10 years from now, 20 years from now, but how time goes so much faster. And so somebody in this room might be, we might be watching them on TV in a few years on a Super Bowl Sunday. Some of you guys, the young guys, y'all may be sitting where I am, at a prayer breakfast saying, hey, I was at a prayer breakfast, 20 years ago, and now it's my opportunity to be the keynote speaker at a prayer breakfast. Just set your goals, set your dreams, because they do come true.
That's right.
More often than not.
That's a good word. Hey, give Keith a hand. Thanks for being here today, Keith.
Thank you for listening to the Stories We Share podcast. The Stories We Share is a ministry of Centerville Community Church and is recorded by our lead pastor, Kedrick Hershey. If you have a story that you would like to share, we would love to hear it. Please reach out to us at office@centervillecommunity.org. And be sure to follow us on all of our socials. You can find us pretty much anywhere at Centerville Community. And we'll see you next time on The Stories We Share.